Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and today's guest is the incredible Zac Goins. He's a game designer, he's a store owner, he's a publisher. He worked with Mork Borg, Mothership, D&D, he's writing for Primal Quest, he has done a lot of things. But before I get into that, I'd like to remind you of a few things. The Awards 2024, which is Indie Award-giving award that the community gives to each other, has submissions open now, so check out the show notes to submit your work if you do work with role-playing games. And also, if you like the show, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast, share it with others, write a review so I can read here online, and if you have some coins left from your last adventure, check out the show notes how you can support the show, pay us a coffee, help us pay the bills of the podcast, buy one of my games, I don't know. But let's get back to Zac Goins, who is incredible. He does so much. We talk about productivity, we talk about process, we talk about game design, we talk about all the cool things he's working on. We talk about how many hats he has. He's like a hat collector, has more than, I think, 50 or so baseball hats, how he managed to do everything and also, be at home and do everything else in his life. It was really a wonderful chat. It was very sparring. He has great recommendations from books, from series, from everything to read and influences. So if you would like to delve more into being a game designer, being a producer, doing, as I said in the show, I want to be just like him. So check it out, all his suggestions. And we had a wonderful time. I hope you have it too. So let's get weird with Zac Goins. Welcome, Zac. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. I'm glad to have you here. I've been following your work, a word of game design and stuff that you've been doing, and we've been talking about collaborating a little bit. And so I'm excited to have you here and get to know you a little bit better. So, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really good. We were talking before the show, getting ready for some conventions, so that's always an exciting time.
Yeah. March, I'll actually be traveling to the United States. I'll be going to Phoenix, Arizona, to go to Game On Expo, and then to, Chicago and Milwaukee. I don't know, for Gary Con.
Gary
right?
Con, yeah. Well, we'll have to get on after this and talk. I'll be in Chicago as well for Adepticon, so maybe we'll cross paths there in Chicago for a brief time.
I hope so. I'm excited to try authentic deep dish pizza there. So
it's cool.
That's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm always like the conventions are an excuse. I'm really looking forward to the food and the people.
Oh man,
the food. Yeah, that's
you
what
and me.
I'm looking for.
You and me both. I like one of my favorite shows is Origins Game Expo in Columbus, Ohio, because within walking distance of the convention center is so many fantastic restaurants, like all over the place, and you eat good the entire time you're there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. Zac, for maybe the weirdos out there who don't know who Zac Goins is, and I always love to ask you the guests here, so they say in their own words, who is Zac Goins? And some people even get philosophical. Oh, who am I? And this kind of stuff. So, who is Zac Goins? What is that you do? And if you can just share maybe a small weird detail about yourself, maybe a habit, maybe the way you dress, maybe your hats. I don't know. Anything
Okay. Yeah. Well, listen. Let's start there. I have like over 50 hats. I wear a hat every day, and I make my own hats. And my wife Megan, who you've had on the show, helps me. So we do. We buy hats and patches and different things, and then put everything together and put things like that. So I love hats. Yeah. I've gotten hats given to me at shows. Like different people have made hats for me now, different publishers or game designers, and that's my favorite type of hat, is something that's connected to somebody. And every time I wear it, I think about them the whole day. So it's kind of fun. let's see.
That one we were wearing that has like a dark butterfly. What's the story of this one?
Yep. So this hat I made when we signed a licensing agreement for the Hannibal Lecter IP, and I started writing the Hannibal
Wow.
Lecter RPG. So this is the Death Head Moth from Silence of the Lambs, and I just wanted a little hat to wear to kind of like commemorate. Hey, we're doing something cool here, and so yeah, I wear this hat a ton now
Amazing.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Makes me wanna have like a Primal Quest hat or something. That would be cool. Yeah.
that would be awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a half step towards tattoos because I get tattoos for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to commemorate something or something's very important to me.
Yeah.
And hats are
I
like a
want to
good
get one,
trial
but
run.
I'm always postponing. It's like, I want to, yeah. I went to a shop and I people were rude there. Like I asked something, and they were like, "Yo, of course this won't work," and like super, and I was like,
Oh,
"Okay, so yeah, bye then." Okay,
wow.
and
No,
yeah,
my new tattoo artist is actually a friend of mine that I played D&D with for several years. He's a tattoo apprentice now and is doing fantastic work. And so I go to him and get my different swords or different things like that. And he's been
nice, yeah,
fantastic. We're working on a cockatrice tattoo for my
yeah.
D&D commemoration. But anyhow, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. My
Uh,
wife beat me to my tattoo. I wanted to get these two shall pass on like my
oh, that's
arm,
cool. Yeah.
and but she did it before me. No, I'm
No
kidding.
way.
Yeah.
Well, now you just have to get matching tattoos. There, that'd
Yeah.
be fun.
No, I'll write different then. I'll
Yeah,
write like and this too shall pass.
yeah, that's right.
Just to yeah
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Other
But
things.
and
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. So let's see. I consider like if you say who is Zach Goins, I'll say it like right now. I think Zach is a game enthusiast, an RPG enthusiast. This camera feed kind of is cropped, but I live out every day in this room surrounded by all sorts of RPGs, and I play a ton of different RPGs. It's my obsession is learning game systems and mechanics, and being excited to learn your game system and mechanics, whoever you are. I see myself more as an enthusiast, and then kind of after that, um, you know, conventioneer, director of world of game design, and writer of RPGs. But first and foremost, I want my enthusiasm to be kind of the thing that I'm about.
Awesome. And what is that you do? Like
Yeah. So I wear many hats, I guess, in more ways than
yeah.
one. Um, but a couple things that I'm the president of Tabletop Fanatics, which is a white box um, a company that other publishers can latch onto, and we can represent them officially at conventions all across the country. So we represent people like Cubicle 7 and Modifius, and we'll take their stuff, their booth equipment, we'll take their people at times, we'll run their games, and really bring Modifius to the show, or bring Cubicle 7 to the show, or Stockholm Cartel, or somebody like that. And so it's just a great way of helping people that maybe they live overseas, or they just don't have the bandwidth, but it's a great way of getting games, different types of games in front of
Yeah,
new
awesome.
people, and it lets me kind of sing about that. The other thing that I do is I'm one of the directors at World of Game Design. World of Game Design is a publisher in its own right. We publish several different things, including the upcoming Hannibal RPG, Zweihander, a bunch of Mork Borg, Mothership, 5e supplements, System Neutral, all sorts of things. And then we also help other creatives get their projects to print and distributed. And as a big part of all that, and kind of how it all started was I write. So I've written a lot of stuff for 5e and OSE and Mork Borg and Mothership and Zweihander and Marvel Multiverse and a few things that are upcoming. Just a wide variety of things. Anything that I can write. Vast Grimm, I want to write it. So that's kind of, I don't know. I do a lot of different things, but that's kind of probably the
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah, that's a lot. That you do a lot. I'm like, wow, how Do you have clones? How do you manipulate time? Time continue?
I
How is that possible?
I have a really good team that at World of Game Design and at Tabletop Fanatics. I'm sure you've met several of them: Troy,
Yeah.
Jared, Daniel, other Zach. There's just so many great people that I work with. But it's just like when you're super excited about something and passionate about it. I mean, it occupies your mind and it occupies a huge chunk of every day, right? So it's
Yeah.
not an 8-hour workday. If it was an 8-hour workday, you couldn't do it all, right? You'd have to cut back.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had an 8-hour day to do to this, but
Yeah.
it's fantastic, and I'm impressed. I I remember when we started, talking about collaborating, and
Yeah.
very quickly you put things together, and it was very on top of things, and I was like, wow, I gotta up my game here,
No. That's the other thing, right?
That's
Like
great.
it's not, I guess this probably isn't what we're necessarily talking about today, but one of the big things is like, I've learned that what you got to do if you want to do so many things is you just got to dive in and do things, right? Just make it
Yeah,
happen,
yeah,
get it done. And so, um, learning as
yeah.
many tool sets as you can is important, and being willing to just do it is important.
Yeah. There is this book that I love that helped me kind of get out of a funk of not getting it done, which is another phrase I want to tattoo, which is put your ass where your heart wants to be. That's
Oh
the
yeah,
title of the book. Yeah, because it
that's a
is
great
this, like,
title.
if you really, if you always say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but do you really want it? Because if you really want it, you would be there doing this, right, in a way.
Mm,
And that's kind of like why this phrase is, if I really want to do this, I have to put my ass there and do the work and sit down. Like, I keep dreaming about like this big Primal Quest book. If I want this to happen, I have to sit down and write the damn thing, and continue the line. I can't just keeping have ideas. Like, we always see these people like, oh, I have these great ideas, always very extravagant, and but doing it is the really, for me at least, is very, very hard. It's like a
but
discipline, and then like getting to a routine helps. Like, now that I'm doing constantly, uh it helps. But I'm gonna travel, for these
yeah,
conventions for like 15 days,
yeah,
and it's really hard to even like traveling, keep doing, at least trying to write. Sometimes I make it. Sometimes I, for the first days, I can do it, and then I don't. And when I get back, uh, it is hard. But on the other hand, Jane Cone kind of helped me get back into the
yeah.
rhythm. So maybe
What is the
maybe I'll get it done.
What's the hardest for you? What's the hardest part of the doing? Is it the starting, the continuing, or the finishing of something that's the hardest?
I think it's everything, because I really don't have a set amount of time just to sit down and write. So I have to write in the nooks and crannies between the stuff I have to do, like doing the day job and take care of the kid, and
Right.
getting him to the school, and doing stuff around the house, and spending time with the wife, because that's like super important too.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I have to start and stop several times. So
Right.
yeah, it's really, and I don't know, now I learn about something, about autism, and I learn about PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. And I
Mm.
was reading about, and I was check, 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 check. And my son's like everything, like he invents his, oh, my legs are hurting, and this kind of stuff, and it pretends
Yeah.
he doesn't remember how to do stuff he remembers how to do, and
Hmm.
yeah, so
How old is your son?
8 years old, yeah,
8. My daughter's 8 and my son is 10. So yeah, right in the same boat. Yeah, that sounds
yeah, yeah,
familiar.
yeah. Yeah, and as you do all those things, I ask if you, how do you approach? How do you wake up in the morning and you go straight to it? Do you have a ritual, like a creative ritual, that maybe helps you get into the moods, do everything? How is
Ooh.
your work routine, for example?
Yeah. Well, I think I can tell you two things. One thing is I make lists. I can show you a little bit here, but I make checklists every single day. I fill notebook after notebook, literally every day. I have a checklist of things, and that's how I
Mm-hmm.
start every day. Sometimes I do it the night before. Sometimes I do it first thing in the morning. But I start a list and say, "This is what I need to accomplish today," and that's kind of focuses my
Can you
mind. Go
can
ahead.
you give us an example, for an example, if you can share like something you do in a day,
Yeah, I can.
like a
Yeah,
list
so
of all this stuff, for example?
sure, absolutely. Let's see here. So here's one where I have a list that says working on a particular Kickstarter, trying to get a quarter of the Kickstarter page built. Then I had a couple of charts that I had to lay out and design. So I had like finish half the charts. Then the second half of the day was finishing the other half of the charts. Writing an article was on the list. I had a meeting with a convention that was on the list.
Wow.
I'll put like 30 emails. So it's not like clear my inbox, but
Wow.
but I
Yeah,
clear my
yeah.
inbox pretty much once a week. And so a big part of every day is, hey, try to get through 30 emails, try to get through,
Yeah.
maybe if it's Friday, it might be like, all right, try to get through 30 emails and then 20 emails is another checklist later in the day and then another 20 and then you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, well,
uh,
now I'm thinking like every time I travel and I come back, it's like 300, 500 emails, and oh my
yes,
god.
yes, that's how it is for me. And
Yeah,
like, gotta clear it out. I know how it is to send somebody an email and just never get a response. And I'm not at the point where I can respond like every day or every 2 days. But I am at the point
yeah,
where I want to make sure that like I do respond to you, no matter who you are and what you need or whatever. Like I want to
yeah,
make sure that like that's if
yeah.
I'm putting
I
it on a
fail at
business
that.
card.
I fail at
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah,
it's it's too much sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah, but continue. Like the emails, you have anything more? Because for me,
yes.
it's already like that's a three day workload for me.
Yeah.
That's too
So another
much.
thing another big thing that is typically on the list is like messages because it's not just emails, it's Facebook and Discord and things like that.
Yeah.
So those sometimes take a backseat to some extent, in the sense that if I only spend time emailing and messaging, nothing else ends up getting done because
Yeah,
people, we
yeah,
chat, right? And I
yeah.
love chatting with people, but on
Yeah.
Facebook Messenger, I'll respond to your message and you'll probably respond back within a few hours, and now I've got to respond to that again, which is fantastic. But that's a sinkhole of time, right? If I have 13
Yeah, yeah.
conversations that I'm engaging with, um, and then other
You have
things
to
that are
schedule time to do this stuff. Like I
yep,
remember Neil Gaiman talking about, when you start to become successful, you start answering emails and realize that he wasn't a writer that answered emails. He was someone that answered emails that
Ye-
occasionally was writing.
yes,
So
yes. I
it's
would
it's
love to
hard.
not
Yeah.
be that. Um, I will say that like typically if I'm going to have a writing day, it's typically either a half day or a full day that is completely dedicated to that. It's rare for me to say, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do emails and meetings and scheduling this and chatting with that, and I'm going to write for 2 hours. That's a rarity. Typically, it's I'm going to devote today to writing because that's a hard thing to squeeze in. You got to be in the right mindset, I think.
And you work on games full time now, right? You don't
Yeah.
you don't have any
Yeah.
other. Yeah,
I don't have
that's
any other
that's
job. Yep.
fantastic.
This is
Yeah,
it. Yep. Yeah.
yeah.
That's pretty much it. There might be a few like household chores that sneak
Mm-hmm.
into a list, right? Because I
Yeah,
work from home, my wife doesn't, so it's easier for me to keep the laundry going or do the dishes or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes those will make the list too. As hey, these are still important, even if they're not part of the job. So
Of course. And do you have a hobby? Now that you work with your hobby, basically, do you have
yeah,
any escape from it, or this is all you have or something like this?
I have one. I kind of guard it religiously. I have one, and that's maybe two. So the one that I'm thinking of is there's a game called PUBG. It's an old game. It's like 8 years old. It's a video game. But you play
How's
as
the name?
PUBG, Player
PUBG.
Unknown's Battlegrounds. PUBG is the name.
Okay.
But it's basically a battle royale. Think like Fortnite,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more mature, I guess, in theme, and it's hard. It's more difficult.
Okay.
I say you're really excited if you win like once every few weeks. Win
Because
once every
mature
few weeks.
can mean many things, more
Yeah, it's got
mature.
like a more modern aesthetic, a more realism aesthetic, not like
Yeah.
horrifically,
Fortnite is
but
very cartoony kind of way, very
yeah.
playful, right?
This is more like if you think of it visually, like a third person Call of Duty or something like that, but where you
Okay.
play as survivors, as people, not as soldiers, and you're just trying to, beat 100 other people, 99 other people to win. And I like it because it requires all of my focus. It requires all of my attention. It's super engaging, and the matches are 30 minutes long typically. So if no
you
matter
can
what's happened during
you
the
can
day, no
disappear
matter
for a while, right?
exactly, if anything less than this wouldn't be able to cut through everything else and just envelop. But it's nice to have something that requires your full self. So that's why I like it.
Yeah. And you said you might have another one?
Well, I like film a lot, and I watch a lot of films and
Yeah,
series.
people like movies when they call it film. So yeah.
That's fair. I don't. Maybe I'll back off. I'll say I like movies because I actually like. I don't want to be like. I don't want to come off as weird about it or as like
No,
too
it's great.
high.
It's
Like,
I don't know. I I yesterday I was interviewing, and then they said that there is a difference between doing cinema and film at university.
mm,
But I forgot about asking what's the difference. But now I'm thinking about what's the difference between studying film or cinema.
yeah, that's interesting. No, I think probably like I said at the beginning with games. I think I'm the same way with film, where I want to just be an enthusiast. Like I want to love things. I want to be able to talk about why I love things, but I just want to enjoy them, and I want to be like that's what I want to do is go enjoy and have fun with the cinema or with the film or with a movie, and I want to share that enjoyment with you or with somebody else. And I went and saw Dune this last week and was like crying in the theater, like tried to keep myself from standing up in the theater just because it was such a emotional, dynamic, like from the heart experience, and that's why I
Yeah,
like the film so much. Not because it's the craft of it, but because of the emotion that it can give you, I guess.
yeah. It's I love it too, and you can go to a good movie. I remember, last time I was in, to Gen Con, I was in New York for a couple of days, and I went to see the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, I want to see some movie, IMAX or something, and then I saw this room that had symbols or I don't know, and I went there, but it was those chairs that would shake, and it's
yeah.
terrible. You can't
Oh,
watch them because the chair wanna it's trying to get you off the chair, and you
oh,
spend half the movie trying to
just hold it
keep,
on. Yeah,
yeah, just holding on. It's terrible. Yeah, I wish
yeah.
I had just gotten like a regular showing or anything. But
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
So have you been seeing any like good movies or film lately? Something that caught your eye or caught your imagination? Something weird maybe?
Who? Let's see. Something weird. Um, let's see. I think the things that obviously like Dune was. I think Dune will go down as one of my favorite movies of all time. But that's. I think everybody's talking about Dune right now. I'll tell you the
The
thing that it
second
really.
one or the first
The
one
second
or
one. The
this
second one. Yeah, the new
one
one. Yeah,
now? Wow.
yeah. I literally was I went to a small theater to watch it by myself, and I was sitting there crying through part of it, and
Wow.
just like overwhelmed with emotion I think Denis Villeneuve he was speaking to me in that movie is how it felt. Like everything that I love about Dune as a book, I felt like he understood, and even the changes that he made, I felt like, at least for me, I understood why he made them, and it communicated that he understood what was it was on, like we were on the same wavelength. And so to me it was like a very personal, like getting to know the director, getting to know, like I felt like I connected with them a little bit in that. And then the movie's just gorgeous. And then the other thing that I've been hooked on recently that is very weird and that I really adore, my doppelganger, the other Zac Goins, put me onto the TV
The
show
other Zac
Atlanta.
Goins? What?
Yes, there's two of
What?
us. Yes, and we work together. So it's a wild, weird mix. His
Okay,
name has
who is the other Zac Goins?
yeah. So other Zach, we call him Shadow Zach sometimes, just to help.
Shadow Zac.
But Shadow Zach is he's a guy. He lives down in Atlanta, and
He
he and
makes
I
games too, RPGs and
he
stuff.
makes games. Yeah, literally. We connected just because it was funny. Like years ago, before either one of us was a game designer, I think like we were in a same Facebook group, for D&D, like a big one of the big
Hmm.
ones, right? And I just happened to see his name and like that's kind of funny. And he likes D&D, and he had made a post that I liked, so I just friended him. And then like a year later, I'm trying to write games, and I'm by myself at my home trying to figure it out, doing a lot of commission work. And I saw him post on Facebook saying, "Hey, I'm making this D&D book, and I need a writer. If people want to apply, they can put here." So I applied, and he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we started writing together there, and we haven't stopped. So we've written together on a ton of stuff. We both work at World of Game Design. He works part time, and we go to a ton of conventions together. We just took a huge road trip together. We're going kayaking together in a couple months. Like he's one of my best friends now.
That
And
would be amazing. Like I would schedule something with you, like schedule this interview here, and he shows up like, "Hi, I'm Zac Goins." Like,
right,
what?
yeah,
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 that's
yeah.
great.
We're different in some areas, but we're oddly similar in a lot. And so it's been really fun to like he's definitely a different person. And if you ever chat with him, you'll definitely say I can
Oh,
tell the difference between the
yeah.
two. But on the same hand, it's been fun to like realize that like two people that,
He has a beard like this too? Does he
he has a
look like
beard,
you
but it's not
anyway,
quite
or
as long. It's not
okay?
quite as long, and it's a little bit more
Yeah.
red than mine is. So,
Okay.
but that's a good thing probably. But we're about the same height. We're about the same build.
Wow.
You know, he's and he's great. But yeah, he turned me onto a show called Atlanta because he's from Atlanta,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and that's Donald Glover starring, and it's
Yeah.
this dark comedy about the music scene in Atlanta, and it's weird. That show is super weird, and I adore it. I've plowed through 2 seasons over the past 2 weeks, just while I'm doing graphic design or whatever for a project. I'll be watching Atlanta on the other screen, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. I started watching it, but I stopped it for some reason. I gotta go back. It's really good too. Yeah, everybody says great things. And since we're
Yeah,
talking, about weird, I want to
yeah,
ask you maybe if you can define what is weird for you and how do you see the weird, maybe also in your work and your life in general. How do you seek
yeah.
it in your work and in your life?
Yeah, it's interesting. Listening to some of your previous episodes, and then you send out a questionnaire, and I was thinking about this, and I think like in a lot of ways I'm not a weird person, or at least I don't. But then thinking about it, I'm like, well, obviously
You have
the
50 hats, man.
I have 50 hats, but also yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But also like I think that I don't see myself as weird because I'm surrounded by also weird people, right?
Yeah.
Where game design as a job is a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the thing that really kind of drove home to me is like thinking about um, where I was as a kid and growing up and what I was raised, how I was raised as compared to where I am now. And like, I think there's a very much a weirdness there that isn't typical. The fact that I grew up in a super, super conservative, very religious home in rural Midwest America. I was homeschooled for almost my entire, like from grades second through 12th, I was homeschooled. Um, and my family, I remember very clearly a couple of moments. I didn't know what D&D was for years, but I remember very clearly going to the library and renting a novel, and it was a Dragonlance novel. And my dad saw it when I came home, and he took it from me nicely, but he took it from me. He's like, "You cannot read this. This is tied to D&D, and we don't do that." And so he took it, and we returned it. He said, "You could pick out a different book," and so I picked out a Forgotten Realms book and brought it home. It was one of the Dritz books, and Dad didn't know that Forgotten Realms was tied to D&D, so it was perfectly fine. And that's my fun little note about how I ended up with Forgotten Realms instead of Dragonlance was. But
Yeah.
that's the world that I grew up in. This very isolated. I grew up on a farm, all of that, and then just the right things at the right time kind of weirdly put me down this path that was very, in some ways, very antithetical to what I should have done or what you would have thought I would have ended up with. But in a lot of other ways, like it ended up really like being a nice bridge. And I think I'm a bridge. Hopefully, I'm a bridge more than anything between that world and places that I am now.
Do you
But
still live in that world, that more conservative Christian world, and you haven't, do you take something from this weird world of role playing games and uh,
I think
fantasy
so.
to that conservative world? You work as an emissary in a way?
I think so. And I think that the other interesting thing that I don't think my dad realizes it, but I think my dad is also kind of was the start of the bridge because my dad, even though we were very conservative, my dad is an English teacher, and he had fallen in love with many things, but one of the things being Tolkien. And as a very young child, at 5, 6, 7, 8, Dad was reading every night. He would read those books to us for during the summers or during whatever. And so he was instilling in me, even in the house that we were in, he was instilling in me this love of fantasy just through Lord of the Rings. And while I would say that I haven't kept everything from the past, we still live in rural America. We still live in the West. We still live in a small town. Um, I still attend church regularly and things like that. But I think that for me, I've found a different way through it or a different way forward with it than what I had experienced. And some of those
Hmm.
things are pulling, like I adore a lot of the language and the themes and the ideas that come from religion in general, but because I'm most familiar with it, probably Christianity and Protestant Christianity in particular. I love the language and the ideas that are there, and so you'll definitely see in a lot of my works little nods or ideas or themes tied that tie back to that.
Hmm.
Hopefully, in a way that is maybe seen by some as sacrilegious, but I see it more as like an appreciation of those things, and I'm wanting to pull what I love out of them and offer them in different contexts and different situations.
I see.
Um,
And so you're still part of that religion. Do you practice? Do you go to church? Do you pray? Do you have a religious practice?
I would say yes, but probably not in. I it's
Not
a
as
tricky.
disciplined as
Yeah, not as
as your
disciplined is probably the
parents.
right
Yeah.
word, and I think that the other part of it is that one of the things that when I kind of came out of a lot of that, one of the things that I carried with me, or one of the things I said was like, I don't want to like lean into anything or carry with me anything that I don't fully believe to be true in and of myself, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what I think I have now is a religion or a faith that is very simple in a lot of ways, because I don't want to, like, I'm very cautious about adding things to it or about speaking out about certain aspects if I don't feel in my core that this is a true thing. And probably more than anything in my life, religion is a big part where I say, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't, let me rephrase that. I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't want to make statements, or I don't want to like draw lines in the sand if at all possible. I want to learn. I want to listen. I want to pay attention, and I only want to incorporate things like from there into myself if I feel like in my bones this is something that I can believe in, and this is something that I hold true and hold sacred. It is important, and I think that list is extremely small. Um,
Would you share some of these core beliefs for others, or things that you take from that are very valuable for you and
yeah,
maybe help you in your life?
yeah. I think that there's a reality to me that there's a lens of reality that makes sense to me, that there is a creative entity behind the galaxy. Like, I don't know exactly what that means fully. I don't think, even if I would call myself a Christian, I don't even know that I could communicate fully what all that looks like. But I believe that it makes some amount of sense that there's a creative entity at play here, and or a greater entity or an other entity elsewhere that has a hand in the shaping of the universe. And to me that's a comforting thing. It's also a cool thing, which is probably the part that I latch on to. That, like, I love science fiction and I love the idea that we're not alone in the universe. And I think that the minute
And
that
do you
we
have any
assume,
idea how this who is this entity and how this entity is? Do you believe it's this idea of the Christian God in the sky and watching us and all this
oh
stuff? Or
man, I would say no if we're gonna add all that context. I think though that there is an entity that, if you say that there's an entity and that entity had a hand in creating, then obviously they are active in some way, and they are aware in some way, and they have an awareness of you in some way. I think all those things make sense. If they're creating, that they have an awareness of their creation, that makes sense. Further than that, though, I get really sketchy, because I say, even within Christianity, the further you dig, the more, a lot of times, the answer is, well, we don't really know, or this is an interpretation, or this is symbolic of something, or there's a finite way that we can understand this, and this is an infinite idea. And that's a true statement, right?
mm-hmm.
The universe is so vast, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
infinite. There's no way that we can grasp it. And so I'm comfortable, I think, right now
yeah.
in
It's very
embracing
about
that there's
interpretation. Yeah.
interpretation, but also, like, I'm cool with not even worrying about interpreting. Like, if we're going to interpret, by default, that means that we are going to take an infinite idea, or a vastly above our pay grade idea, and we're going to try to distill it down to something that we can wrap our heads around. And I think as soon as we do that, we've lost something core about the thing. And
But
so,
that's everything, right? That's every words, written words. It's a reduction
right.
of an idea.
Yeah.
Everything is a reduction of an idea.
I think that's okay. But I think that it's fun, or maybe fun's not the right word, but I think there's something valuable in saying, like, I don't, to me at least, I think the idea of saying, I don't want to reduce this, at least not right now. I just want to accept the fact that I can't grasp this. I don't know. There's
Mm-hmm.
mountains that I don't know. And instead of trying
Yeah,
to put it in my mind in a way that I can understand, just say, I don't understand it. I'm comfortable with that. And
yeah,
maybe there's pieces that I'll feel like I can carve off this, or I can shape this, or I can see a shape here. And maybe, maybe that happens tomorrow. Maybe it happens in 10 years. I don't know. But, like, for me, I'm just very comfortable with saying this is a thing that I don't understand, but that's okay. And maybe that's a thing for the future.
yeah, yeah. It makes sense, and but I also like to explore ideas of what it might be. And
Yes.
there's like this phrase that says that God is the name of the blanket we throw over the unknown.
Mm, that's
You know,
great. Yeah.
and but it's fun to yeah, I think maybe behind the blanket there is this or that. It's fun
Yeah,
to explore theories and ideas, and I think they relate really well because religious we think there is a creator and like we came from it, and when we die we go back to it, and atheists says no, there is nothing. After you die
yeah,
you go back to nothing, and there was the big bang, and there was nothing before the big bang. And I was like,
yeah.
yeah, it makes sense, because if there was nothing behind the big bang and after you die you become nothing, you go back to your creator, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing in a
Same
way.
concept. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
that's why I love. I think like writing and telling stories and games in general, but really the storytelling aspect and the world design aspect, because I think for me it's a safe spot because you can explore ideas and you can wonder and you can create your blanket um, with
yeah.
or look underneath the blanket, but it's elsewhere. I think the danger for me with the real world, so to speak, is I don't like once I start imagining what's under the blanket, it's we've seen a lot of danger about what happens when people carry that too far, or they want to push their beliefs about what's under that blanket
Oh
to
yeah.
to so I'm not here to say anything. I mean, I love a lot of people that are in a lot of different areas in this field. So I'm comfy with wherever people are there, but um, for me, I like the exploration to be in a fictional space for myself, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Zach, talking a little bit maybe about inspiration, and I always mention that I draw a lot from the stuff that I consumed in my childhood, like comics or
Yeah,
movies and etc. And so I always ask guests here if maybe they have a specific area of culture of their for their life where they see themselves drawing a lot from ideas and concepts or words in their work. I know as artists and game designers, we are always drawing everything like we consume. We have this very design and analytical eye, and we cut everything apart and try to see what we can see. But I myself, I have this very specific area, so I'm wondering if maybe you have anything like this, any part of culture of your life that you draw a lot from.
yeah. I think that when I think about that, I think about two distinct areas. The first inspiration, I'm definitely a person who I love game mechanics, arguably just as much as I love game narrative and role play, right? And so one of the things I adore, it's harder to find. The harder piece of inspiration is finding I love listening to game designers talk about game theory. And so podcasts, YouTube, books, like anything that I can get my hands on typically, or just games themselves. That's the biggest one, right? Like just reading a game and trying to learn it is hugely inspiring for me. I think that's probably the top. Like, what is this game doing? What is this game designer trying to do with their character sheet? Like, what are they communicating about what a character's like based on the character sheet? What are they doing with their core dice, like, or with their dice resolution that actually is communicating something about themes? Like, those are the
Have you been reading? Have you read? Do you read like game design theory books or anything like this?
I have some. I will say that, and I'm not like I'm always game. If you send me a title, I will probably read it. Like I'm always excited about that side of things. I will say that mostly where I end up consuming is YouTube videos with different game designers have posted, and reading books, reading RPG books with an analytical eye. Um,
Do you have
when
any channels, any YouTube stuff or
yeah, I'll
podcasts or
be
anything to recommend? I,
yeah,
I
I'll
I
be
can recommend one. Have you seen the game design masterclass by Will Wright?
no. Tell me about that. Tell me about or
It's excellent. Will Wright is the guy from The Sims.
uh-huh.
It is kind of for video game, but since his
Oh
approach
yeah.
to games is very open world and open ended, it's perfect for role playing games. It's very
That's
good.
there's so much. to be mined from video game design that we haven't done yet as the RPG community. Like if you think about how many billions of dollars are spent on video game design every year, it's our industry is so much smaller. And I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier this year, and I was saying like we should be looking at video games for how you design an
Should be looking at
RPG.
all games.
All games, yeah.
All
But
games. All
absolutely,
games.
because
Yeah.
they have more money and more eyes on this, and like they're not going to get everything right, and not everything from a video game is going to translate to a tabletop experience. But there are some things that will, and maybe
Yeah.
it's
From one
maybe
thing
it's
learn 1,000 things.
yeah, maybe like one of the things that I think is important that is huge is like talents and traits and skills and trees and things that go to that. Like, holy smokes! Like, how many games have really like think about WoW or even the new Call of Duties or things like that. And I'm not a big video game player other than PUBG, but I have an understanding of those. I'm like, WoW has millions of players that adore its game.
Yeah, there's always something to steal from this.
Exactly.
Place,
So I would say that one that, and I'll be careful here because I know he's controversial in some ways in the scene, but I think even still, and I even still I would recommend it. But there was early on in my game design days, Mike Merles was doing a show called Mike Merles Happy Fun Hour, where he would just get on YouTube on a live stream and he would talk
Mike Merle's
about
Happy Fun Hour.
Yeah, yes? I think it was called Mike Merle's Happy Fun Hour.
Okay.
And it was just him like sitting down and talking about the game theory of 5th edition. And like he would design, I think one of them he was designing an acrobat subclass for the rogue or something like that, right? And it was just him like getting in the weeds about why they designed things certain ways, thoughts that they had, what this 3rd level ability slot is supposed to do. Like it's just like from the mouth of someone who had a hand in designing the biggest role-playing game that's ever existed, right? Like it was interesting to see his thoughts on why and how. And I remember like watching those heavily in the early days of writing and saying like, oh my gosh, okay, I feel like I can design a better X for this game because I'm like learning from someone who understands it. And I think that was very influential in what I do now, because my own YouTube channel is how, the thing that I do is how to play games, right? So we did how to play Primal Quest, but we also have done I think we've done like 16 different games, and I'm not the game designer on these games, but I am somebody who's trying my very best to understand the system and communicate why. And I don't know, I give a huge nod to Happy Fun Hour as something that really rocked me early on.
Yeah, that's great. And
another one I would point towards really quick on this side of things is from the game design perspective is I just learned the game fully, Numenera. And that, as a game designer, that system and that character sheet is mind-blowing. It's so good and it's so smart. And to me, I feel like I was sitting at the feet of a wizard when I learned that game. I'm like, oh, this person isn't just taking what we know about RPGs and kind of shuffling around a few things and ta-da, it's a new game. It's really like presenting new ideas about how things could work, or at least like a brand new presentation and something that's really solid. I was blown away by that, and I think it really shook my design.
I like the system, but I do think it could be presented in a more compact way. Like the system is simple, it's intuitive. I think the character sheet is, I think it's scary. Like the first time I saw the character sheet, there's too many fields to fill. I thought, wow, this is gonna be a lot of work, but it is not. I don't know. I have the feeling the presentation could be a lot more friendly and not so scary. The book is too big. I don't know. I feel like the system could be like a zine, like a digest-sized book.
Yeah,
and
I'll say
would be much more approachable because it is not hard. It is flexible. It's a good system, but the books are too big. That's my issue with it.
I probably got. You're probably right because I got the best of both worlds of all worlds there. The I learned by a great friend of mine, Andrew Bashinsky, from Toronto.
I have the books here. I like them, but
Yeah,
it's too much.
yeah. He sat down and taught it to me, so I didn't have to read the book at all. I just got to learn from somebody who knew what they were talking about, which is the best way. And it was fantastic. And I got to ask all my questions, and he had answers.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Um, to answer the other piece of your question though, because really game design is one piece, but the other piece is um, I really love. This is probably where we get into the weird, but I really love super strange, bizarre. Um, I think the right word is probably visceral.
Porn.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, uh,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. Movies, especially, but books too. And I'll name a few titles that really hit that for me. Um, 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 um,
Have you seen Severance, the TV show?
no, I haven't seen Severance. Tell me about Severance. While we're good here.
It's super weird. It's like you like dark comedies. It's the story is people go work in this technological company, but if you go work there, you have to put a chip in your brain, and and you get inside the company, you forget everything from your life outside the company,
Oh,
and
that's
when
cool.
you get outside of the company, you forget everything from inside the company. So you
Right.
live two lives in a way,
That's
and
cool.
your work life is only alive at work. So
Mm,
you're kind of a slave to yourself in a way,
mm,
right?
that's
And
very
and
cool.
it's directed by Ben Stiller.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it has a little bit of dark humor.
Yep.
It's very very good. It's on
Severance.
Apple Plus, Apple
Okay.
TV. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, and a few that I would list that really connect to me as movies, or that I really like to draw from or think a lot about, are anything body horror is huge. So there's a new movie with Viggo Mortensen that stars in called Crimes of the Future. Um, that I thought was fantastic in its own weird way. It's from 2022. It's a Cronenberg movie, so if you're familiar with Cronenberg, I'm sure you are. But Crimes of the Future
I am not.
it's not a it's not a good movie. I'll say it carefully there, but it's a
It took me a
super
long
weird.
while to
Yeah.
watch like horror movies. I was like super scared as
Y-
a kid, so yeah, I
Mm,
haven't.
I'm the same way. I'm the
Yeah.
same way. It's been a newer thing, and I would say Crimes of the Future is light in horror, much more just in body manipulation, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another great one is The Thing, right? Or a
Mm.
not great one that I also think about a lot is Splice. If you've seen Splice with Adrian Brody, um, yeah, like that's a weird, not good movie, but the ideas that it has in it are super captivating. Um,
Yeah.
so like anything body horror film wise is great. And then the other big thing that I think about a lot, and I read pretty much every year, is because I find that there's a lot to pull from, is Watership Down. Watership Down is my favorite book. It's my favorite story, and I am obsessed about how that story is told, the characters in that story, how riveting it is for kids, but also for adults. How there's something to pull for everybody. Like I think it's a masterclass in the perfect story all the way around.
Watership Down.
Yeah, it's the one with rabbits. If you think about
Yeah, I
that.
don't remember this one. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a movie that people talk about a lot, an older movie that was produced by the same studio that did the old
There's a movie
Lord
on
of the Rings.
Netflix.
Yeah, there's a movie on Netflix that's kind of an extended one, but if you can find the one from 1978, that movie, that's the right one. That's the one that will captivate you. Um,
Wow. And
um,
and and has this influenced in any way your work? Have any elements of it, or anything you learned from it that you could like points
yeah,
from anything you did, for
I think that
example?
there's two scenes in Watership Down that I pull from all the time. At least like I think about these scenes before I sit down to write my own adventures or themes or characters. There's characters from these have made their way heavily. One is a scene, one of the rabbits in it is kind of like an oracle, very much an oracle. He's a small run to the litter rabbit. He's very thin and frail. He sees things that other people don't. He has visions. I would say, though, that the other part of him that's interesting to me is I really think, and arguably in some ways, I think that this rabbit, and this maybe would be intriguing to you, he in some ways, I think he exhibits some traits of autism. I think probably we weren't talking in that language back when Richard Adams wrote the book. But I think that like there's some aspects of that. But he's really the hero, one of the heroes of the story, certainly one of the two. But the visions that he has were terrifying to me as a kid, and they're terrifying to me now, not because they're mean or cruel or whatever, just because the language like gets you wrapped up in just like sharing in the terror of this oracle, seeing the vision of their warren being gassed or destroyed or whatever it is. Like it was terrifying. And so I love the idea of oracles and of the small frail individuals that carry with them a power or can tap into a power.
Yeah, they hold
Yes.
access to this magical world that others can't.
Yes.
And there is a lot of history about people that would see neurodivergent people in their communities as this kind of magical people that had access to this.
Yes. There's also this idea, 100%, and there's also this idea, in I think it's Greek. I think it's Greek when they're talking about the oracles there, Oracle of Delphi or whatever. Like they would talk about like there's some evidence that where these oracles resided in their temples were built over top like gas vents, and so they were like their visions were induced by like inhaling gases, right? And like to me, like, oh, that's super fascinating. And then the other scene that I think probably I draw on the most is there's this scene with a rabbit called Cowslip. And Cowslip, our hero rabbits are traveling away from their old warren. They're trying to find a new home, and Cowslip invites them to his warren. And as soon as you meet Cowslip, and as soon as you meet the rest of his warren, you know that something is off. These rabbits are they're more, they walk on their hind legs, and they make murals out of stones, and they make art, and their poets speak of death as something to accept and embrace, and not as something to to fear like all rabbits do. And they're fat and healthy rabbits, and they have this beautiful warren, but it's unnerving the whole time you're there. And I won't spoil it if you haven't read it, but there's this, it's the mood of that, of engaging with what Cowslip, he's an NPC, and he's an NPC who you can't figure out the first time you meet him, right? And he is arguably in some respects a villain, but he's a complex character, and it's somebody that you must engage with before you can figure him out. You can't just meet him and fight him and be done. There's a understanding that has to be resolved, and there's a mystery to be unraveled there. And I think like those are huge elements that I think about a ton. And I mean, you'll see that type of character crop up in a lot of my stories. The manipulative, but not overtly so. The villain, but the villain that is not cruel, and that is not mustache twirling, but is just trying to survive in their own way, and it's just coming into conflict with the way that our heroes are trying to survive. Like that to me is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, we always say like the best villains are the villains who think themselves kind of the heroes in a way, right? They're like doing the hard choices, that the others can do in a way, and I think they're more believable, right? Instead of like the mustache twirling one is very cartoony, and it's very like, yeah, well, why he's destroying everything and stuff like this. So
there's a place for that, right? Like there's certainly stories that should get a mustache twirling villain, and that would be fantastic. But and I'm certain that I have written many mustache twirling villains in my or in my stories, but I like also having a people that have to be figured out, because I think that's what we experience largely in our world. Is we don't really
Yeah.
see a lot of mustache twirling villains. We see a lot of people that figure out, and we're going to figure those people out, and we're going to determine that we can walk alongside them towards a common goal, or we're going to figure them out and say our goals are going to butt heads, right? And then maybe you call that person a villain, but it's a villain in your perception and because of where you're at. I don't know. It's just a fun idea, fun
Yeah,
thoughts.
well, I mean, we as people, we have these habits of creating villains so we can be the heroes of our stories, right?
Right, right.
Something bad happens, we see the other person as a villain, and it's we have to be very careful for it. And I don't know. You said there is a place for mustache twirling villains, and I don't know. Adventure Time has the Ice King, which in the
Uh huh.
beginning is like a mustache twirling villain, uh, but as you explore the series, it's something much more complex than that, and you will
Yeah.
really empathize with him in a way. So I
That's
don't know.
We'll walk it backwards to as another example to Dune, to what we were talking about before. Like the Harkonnens are very much a mustache twirling villain, right? Like there's nothing good and redeeming about the Harkonnens. However, the Harkonnens, especially in the book and specific ones,
But they do
demand
believe in something. They're not like yeah, what I.
no, yeah, but they have it out for the Atreides. They have a blood feud, right? And
Yeah.
the Atreides are, I'm going to say this very carefully. There are heroes, even though they're not heroic. They're the people that we're on the side of theoretically. And but the thing about the Harkonnens is that you respect them. You have to respect them because they have managed to seize power and hold power, and they're smart. At least most of them are smart, or 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 they hold they're scheming, and their schemes work most of the time. Like that's a very reasonable type of villain, and there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
and they
having.
believe they're doing the right thing for them at least.
Yeah,
They're not like,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm evil and I want to destroy everything for being evil. And that thing is like, I don't
And
know,
our
it's empty.
and our side, right, the Atreides,
Yeah.
Paul, is his journey, and what you find in the wider Dune books is that he is a greater villain than the Harkonnens ever were. He becomes a villain, even in this book, even in the first book, arguably, but certainly as you go along. Like obviously, Paul is a villain, and we are just coerced, or we just fall in love with him regardless. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of why I love Dune, is that there's really no such thing as a good person in Dune. You just are choosing a side and you're walking along with that side. But everybody has a vendetta. Everybody's a manipulator. Everybody's a controller, and you're just picking what side to root for. Or
Mm-hmm.
Herbert chose a side, and you're along with him for rooting for the Atreides. But it's not your typical story uh, by a long shot.
Yeah. And it's very, you kind of reminded me of, for example, a series that I liked a lot back then was like Breaking Bad,
Oh
which
yeah,
is like you,
yes.
it kind of starts kind of feels like a comedy in a way because
Mm-hmm.
the actors were known kind of for comedy, and it started he's doing this to get money, so you kind of pity him, but he turns into like
I am the
this
one who
great
knocks. Yeah,
villain.
yeah.
And but you root for him, yeah, in a
Yes,
way, right?
yes,
You
yes,
root for the
absolutely.
villain, and
Yeah,
it's
what an
incredible.
interesting concept. Really, I think that goes back, especially to D&D, and that sort of like the heroic adventuring party. Typically, heroic is in parentheses or at quotation marks, right? Because most of the time, adventurers, as we play them at the table, most of the time would not be seen as heroes in their world, right? They'd be seen as villains. You're going in, you're doing bar fights, you're stealing from the
Yeah,
shopkeep, you're you know
you're
you're
sacking tombs.
yeah, exactly. You're doing all of these things. Maybe at the end of the campaign, you're fighting the evil
Yeah, like
dragon and saving the day. But most of the things you're doing when you're interacting with characters, with NPCs, with civilians, you're a villain. Um, and Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. We like playing
Yeah,
villains
you're
sometimes.
near do well, like
Yeah,
the
exactly. At least that,
yeah
very much so. Yeah, yeah,
yeah rogues or something. It's like for the
yes.
Grimauser in a way, right? And they wouldn't, be able to enter a gala or maybe unless they disguise themselves, they can't go into the respectable part of the city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Zach, do you have any maybe we talked about inspirations from the culture, but maybe do you have a creator or an artist, someone that serves you as a model or that inspires you for the way they approach the work, their craft, or even the way they position themselves in the scene, or
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a mentor in a way? Do you have
Yeah.
anything like this for you?
Yeah. Um, well, I think one that is easy for me to say right out the gate is how Andrew Gatska with the Alien RPG writes adventures. I think is something that we should all in our own way emulate. Like, they're so
Oh,
well put
sorry.
together. Andrew Gatska,
Andrew
he wrote.
Gatska.
Yeah, he writes for Free League, and one of the things that he wrote is the Alien RPG starter kit. And if you read that starter kit adventure and how it's presented, I think it's beautiful. I think it's perfect. It's the perfect adventure. It's the perfect starter kit. Like, that's the best RPG product out there, hands down, in my opinion. But
Wow. I have
I
it, but I haven't read it. I gotta read that.
Yeah, it's because it takes the idea of an adventure and manages to he's figured out a way, I think, to communicate adventures in a way that's easy for a GM to navigate. Um, like and part of that is he's divided it up into 3 acts. So you have your structure of a typical narrative, which I think is a fantastic way of doing it. But then aside from that, he has, like, next to all of the maps, because it's basically a dungeon crawl. It's in a ship, but it's a dungeon crawl. You have, like, room descriptions and things that are in them. But then he also has this whole section that's like, here's all the things in Act One that must happen, right? And it's just a singular page. Maybe it's 2 pages, and it's like, here's all the things that must happen to progress before you get to Act Two. These things have to happen. You figure out as a GM where you want to slot them, but they've got to happen. Same for Act Two, same for Act Three. And then here's a whole bunch of things. Again, it's a few pages of, here are things that can happen. And you can drop them wherever you need them, in whatever room, in whatever situation. They can be triggered by these types of things. But here's a whole bunch of things that can happen that aren't going to, if you don't get to them, that's fine, but it's not a big deal. Anyhow, I've ran that starter set several times, and every time it's like, it just works with my brain. And as a game master, it's like, it's such an easy story to present. Um, and I don't find myself stumbling. I don't find myself, like, forgetting something. I feel like there's a lot of flexibility to it, where um, he's not saying this is the path that you must walk, but this is a story that we're going to tell, and here are the beats of that story. You figure out where to put them that makes sense for your group, and how they're progressing through. I don't know. I think it's perfect. Um, so that would be a
Yeah,
huge one.
that looks great. You said that's a huge one. Do you want to mention any other creators? It doesn't necessarily has to be necessary from RPGs. It can be, you can get inspired by creators from other media if you want, or anything like this.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easy one that I probably is true for a lot of people. I love Stephen King's book on writing, and especially, like, the pieces of advice that he gives in there, and especially the one where he talks about, like, cutting 10% or cutting 20% of a work. Once you write the thing, going back and cutting a big chunk of it, because there's always something to cut. Um,
Yeah,
you know, as somebody who has been a project
I
director over a lot of things, like, that's one of the first things I talk about is, like, what can we cut from this? It's great. What can we cut? Because
yeah.
being succinct is so huge.
Yeah, and
So
more
many.
powerful too, because especially, I mean, I have awareness of this, as I write, because I'm not a native speaker. Sometimes I write in a way that there is, like, I use 3 words, and there is just a very specific one word that will combine all these ideas and will be like much better,
Yeah.
and having this notion and going back and modifying this, it becomes more specific and becomes more evocative. And if you can reduce, because you have the same ideas, right? It's about cutting.
Yeah.
You keep everything, but you cut 10 to 20%. And I confess I'm kind of lazy and I have a hard time going back and doing this, but it is very important.
The other thing that you can do, though, right, as part of that, and I think if you embrace that idea, the other part of that, there's the line that kill your darlings or whatever, but I listening to a lot of people and thinking about a lot of things, like one of the things that I decided early on was, once I've turned in a thing, if I'm writing something on commission, or not on commission, but on contract or something like that, or if I'm just not the project lead on it, a big part of what I do is as soon as I turn it over, it's not mine anymore. And I don't have any ownership to it. And I want it, like, my statement when I hand something off to an editor, as an example, my statement is, I don't want you to ask me questions about things unless it's like super, super big. Like, I want you to take your editor's hand and just do it. Don't go in and offer suggestions. Go in and make the changes, because now it's yours. And I want you to release the best possible version from your eyes. And I think, like, to me, like that idea, though, of cutting 10% or cutting 20%, has the idea behind it, I think, is to not be precious with words, and to understand that it's the message behind the words that you're trying to convey, and words are just the thing that's getting in the way. So as much as you can help,
that imperfection we talked about, like, you can't, it's always an imperfect representation. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, one of the things that I find myself doing now, in addition to the cutting afterwards, another thing that I do is I try to be very unprecious with my words as I'm writing them as well. I think one of the things that I wrote a few adventures for Dragonlance recently, the Dragonlance modules, and I think I told the guy, he said, how do you do this? He said, what's your system? I said, I shit out an adventure. And that's the reality. Is I love it. I enjoy it while I'm doing it, but it's about spilling it out in as quickly as you can, as efficiently as you can, and not trying to like overwrite it too much, or try to present it in any way. It's just about getting in the right headspace, and then just do it and get it out, and trust that the end product is something that you can go back and tweak some, and then hand off to an editor whose job it is to make sure that it's doing its job, and you cut the right things and you said the right things. Trusting in other people to make sure that the work that's finished is right, and not feeling like it's all on your shoulders, I think, is super helpful. But we get really precious. I get really precious sometimes, and that's a hard thing to work out of our system.
Yeah. Hello, weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me. I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and Cosmosaurus from a void dimension. It's a game with a runes light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play, and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on Drive-Thru RPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfuner.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat. How long does it really take for you to write about I don't know 10,000 word kind of adventure, like a small zine? And
Yeah.
how long do you
So
play test it? Do you send it to people to test it? How you? Because I see myself like I write an adventure, I think that's fine, and I play a couple of times and then say, yeah, I'll change this, and this, and becomes
it's
better in a way.
so like a 10,000 word. I would say if I have 2 days, it'll be done. Yeah,
Wow.
if I have 2 days to fully devote to it. If there's definitely times when I've done it in a day. There's also plenty of times where that's taken a month to do just because I don't have 2 days, right? And you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
squeeze it in around things. Um, but if I'm cozy, settled in, I think typically I can write somewhere between 4 and 8,000 words in a day, um, and that's where I like to always be, is in that I have a day to do
Mm-hmm.
this or 2 days to do this, and I can just do it. Um, um, I like doing that a lot. Now, as far as the play test goes, I enjoy running things that I put together, but I see very little value in me play testing something that I wrote, because I know, like, I'm very comfortable in game mastering. I can give people a good game regardless, and so I find much more value in other people play testing it and saying what coming back and saying this is what I needed, or this is what I felt like I was missing, or this I felt like I didn't use at all. Like, that's way more helpful to me. So it's rare for me to do a true play test of my own thing from start to finish. Um, it's much more frequent for me to ask somebody else to do it, or
Mm-hmm.
another person on the team or whatever, or just the reality is I really don't think, I'll be careful here, I really don't think that play testing and adventure is super important,
I
because I
mean, it's not
think
necessarily important, but I always see that it can make it a little bit. Yeah, but it's
it,
about the perfectionism too, right? We can
yes,
always make
there's
it
always things to tweak.
a little bit better and say, yeah, maybe. Well, if I put a new maybe hint here in this room,
Yeah,
it will facilitate they figuring
yes,
some shit
100%.
out. Like for like Cave of Horror people, and like in the future, complete Primal Quest edition will be a little bit different.
Yeah,
I will modify a little bit because I've played it a lot more since then. Like
yeah,
the one in the old school essentials version of Primal Quest, it is already a little bit different. There's a little bit, you know,
yeah.
a fix here and there. So
Yes, you'll always find, and I love that piece of play testing where you do find things to go back and fix. But also, I love revising too, right? Like, I love just going back and rereading it, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, and saying, like, what do I see now with fresh eyes? I think you get a lot of
oh
value
yeah.
there too. So I, I say that as, I guess, as a statement of, like, I don't worry too much about play how much play testing gets done, or how much time am I devoting to revising it. What instead I like to think about is, how many people have read this, what did they think about it, are they game masters, are they players, do they like, and if they're reading it and they're saying, I understand and I want to run this, or I'm inspired by this, great, that it did what it needed to do. Because you're probably going to change things about it anyways when you run it at your table, even if it was a perfectly written adventure, you're probably going to tweak
Yeah,
things
that's
for your
true.
table. So I really care about feedback from other game masters and other writers. Um, and I let that kind of be the thing that drives the revision process more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. Zach, what would you say was the weirdest game you ever played, or even if it's not like the weirdest, maybe a weird game you played recently that made an impression for you, or made you see games or play in a different way?
Yeah. Okay. Let me. I will tell you of one that I adore. That is very weird. Um, let me pull it up here because I'm forgetting the true name of it at the moment. But I have it anyway. Let's see here. So I would love. I've got another one on my shelf while I'm pulling this one up. Another one that I'm really excited to play that's super weird is called Lycoma. Um,
Lycoma.
Lycoma. It's a meat punk RPG, and I think it's super super weird in all of the best ways. So that's one that I'm excited about. Dead Halt. Go ahead.
What is meat punk RPG?
Yeah, so they pitch it as like meat is currency. Like it's a dystopian future where like, your bodies are currency, where you're in this like corporation driven um uh uh harsh reality of kind of this mixture of uh corporate. I think it's like a combination of like a little bit of like fighting the power and corporate thriller with also a mixture of like body horror, um, and in a lot of ways like Crimes of the Future that the movie that we were talking about before. But it's just super weird. It uses a card deck for a lot of its resolution mechanics. It's all in like this little tiny box set. It's over there, actually. Just a little tiny box set that is just really weird. But I haven't gotten to play it, and I haven't gotten to dive in heavy. But it was a Kickstarter that I backed, I think, last year, and it came in a few months ago, and I'm in love. But the one that I would point you to as one that I can speak strongly about is the Dead Halt RPG. Dead Halt. Dead Halt is a little zine. Um, it's got like a black and gold cover. It's a '90s RPG. You're going to work as like quote unquote janitor sort of people in this hotel, and when you get there, you meet the robot that's kind of over the robot host, and basically you go up and down elevator levels, and when you open the elevator into a new level, who knows what experience you'll find, because it's like opening a door to another dimension, to like a little demi-plane or a little portal into something. So you might walk out and you're on a spaceship, or you might walk out and you're in a sewer or a suburb or whatever you might be, and you have this little adventure trying to fix whatever's broken in there, and then you come back into the elevator, go down, he pays you, and then there's a vending machine down in the basement of the hotel, and how you progress your characters, you go down to the vending machine and you spend your money that you earn to get new gear and new things like that. So it's very fun. It's very quirky, weird.
Yeah, I imagine a cartoon of it, like Futurama kind of cartoon of it is, and it would be great.
And it has that aesthetic in the inside, like
it's
the art
a game
is that
from
way.
the '90s. You said Dead Halt RPG.
Well, it's not. It wasn't designed in the '90s, but it's probably, I would say, 8 years old or so. But it was maybe not quite that old, but it has like a '90s vibe to it.
Well, if you can send me a link afterwards.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely.
I'm not finding it anywhere.
Yeah, Dead Halt, DEAD, and then second word Halt, HALT, Dead Halt, and it's fantastic. There's a how to play video on my channel for it. It's one of the first ones I did because I wanted people to check it out, and get the same experience. I think there's a couple of expansions that have come out since then. I think I have one of them, but just the core book by itself, I think you can pick up pretty cheap, and it's a self-contained thing with 2 or 3 adventures already in it. So.
Nice. Zac, now we are about in halfway on the podcast. I would like to ask you more, personal questions. And since you mentioned, religion, your religion, spirituality, I'd like to ask you if maybe you had any, maybe weird experience with it. Maybe, any trance, any transcendental experience of faith, or while you're praying or meditating. Have you ever felt the presence of God in any way like this?
I think so, or at least I think that like I felt that way in the moment and in times around it. Like, what if I would, like, probably with any sort of experience like this, either you question it as time goes on, you question it, or at least the experience gets a little bit more vague, and you don't have the same fervor of belief that you had in the heat of the moment, right? But yeah, I think like one of the things that I experienced growing up a lot. I don't know if you have familiarity with this, but like the um, the like tabernacle, like camp meeting style services and things like that. Um,
Mm.
but where I grew up in, the denomination that I grew up in, like um, all throughout being a kid, we would go for like an extended weekend or for a couple of nights or whatever to a different city. And they would have this campground, and the campgrounds were owned by the church, and they had a big open air tabernacle in the middle. And you would have these big long prayer services and sermons, and there's 3 sermons a day and things like that, right? And I think that there's definitely times when there's times that I think back to that you're like, in the middle of all that, when you've been at an altar or in the middle of a service for, an hour, 2 hours, and there's a lot of like fervency, there's a lot of, emotion and investment in it. Like, yeah, you feel like your body starts to do things. Like I remember one time, like, in the middle of it when you're like super engaged and you're like, you've been super engaged for 2 hours. Like I remember my hands started to like seize up and like, curl up into like that position, and you couldn't undo it. Right. Things like that. And you definitely, whether it's emotion at the time or it's a real thing, like you feel like this wave of, or blanket is probably a better word to use, a word we used before, but like this blanket of a heightened state of feeling is something that kind of encapsulates you, like your whether you're like your body buzzes or your mind is just like pushed, it feels like it's pushing out against itself, um, or there's just different things that can happen that have happened, and um, they're very interesting. At least they're very
Yeah.
interesting, whether or not whatever they are, they're
Yeah.
interesting. So,
Yeah, it's kind of a flow state in a way, right? You're there
yes, flow
engaging
state's a great,
with the
yeah,
community.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And do
yeah.
you mentioned, doing this as a kid, as you're younger, do you still seek this experience today? Do you
I
go
would
to some
say
place you can?
no. That's a good question though. Like I think even with my parents in the later years, like we started to progress out of the more like intense aspects of that side of religion, and
Mm-hmm.
while my parents still maintain and go to church every week and all that, right? Like they're still heavily in it. They're not in the same denominations that have the same, intensity about them in certain areas. And I think that like what I saw there, kind of like, as much as it was definitely an experience and not a bad experience in the moment, I take 2 steps back from it now, and I think like, oh, that's a lot of emotion that then gets carried forward into the rest of your life. Um, and that has good things and it has bad things probably, but like to
Yeah.
me, it's like I I would rather that side of my life not be driven by emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I typically, even though I don't have bad experiences, I say like, oh, this horrible thing happened or I had this horrible experience. Look back and I say I would rather not be engaging in a hyper emotion state with a religious experience at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so, do you seek balance anyway? Do you have any practice, any kind of philosophy, anything that you do to, you know alleviate, the hard times of life, stress, and, if you
I'll
that
tell
hard
you,
stuff,
yeah,
do you meditate? Do you have exercise? Do you, I don't know.
yeah. Well, yeah. I guess one of the things I'll say is right out the gate is I'm happily taking medication, but yeah, because this I am an anxious person by nature, and so
Mm-hmm.
a couple things have happened in the last several years that really helped, and one of them was going to a doctor and asking for help and working through different medications until we found one that actually worked for me. And it's such
Wow,
a
yeah.
relief. So that's not everything, but it's a huge thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it helped in a way that, it helped my brain chemistry reformat when I couldn't figure out how to do it on my own. So that would be a big one. The other thing that I would say is kind of weird, but I have a cousin that he went down to Las Vegas and had this training experience program, uh, very similar, I think, to what you would imagine by like life coaching or something like that. But it's like very intense, and very like destabilizing you, deconstructing you, whatever, and then like helping you put back pieces. And it was very intense. He got a lot of good out of it, and so he ended up having me go down a few years ago. And it was this thing where I'm flying down to Vegas away from my family for you know sometimes a week at a time, sometimes 3 days at a time, and um, walking into a room full of people that I don't know, 20, 30 students along with me, and then a teacher, and being asked to publicly talk about things, acknowledge things, bring up things, recognize things about myself, about how I see the world, about how I feel like the world has treated me, things like that, right? Your family, your
Mm-hmm.
church, your whoever, right? Whatever. And what they try to do is do it in such an aggressive way that very quickly like rattles you, breaks you, and kind of like leaves you with looking at the bare essentials or the bare bones of who you are at your core, and then deciding if those things are things that are what you want or not, and kind of working
Wow.
through them. It was so emotionally like it destroyed me for that. It was about a 3 month process. It was awful in all the worst ways. Being away from your family
Really?
while
Wow.
my wife, my kids, things like that, while you're learning things about yourself and things that you do that you don't want to do anymore, mindsets that you have that you don't want to have anymore, understandings about relationships that you have in your life that are bad or that are unhealthy that you didn't realize before, uh, hidden things, buried things that you've pushed way down deep into
Yeah,
your
yeah. We all
that
have
that you all we
thoughts.
all
Yeah.
have, exactly right. And having all of those flooding up and being surrounded by strangers is not a fun experience in a city that you have never
Yeah.
really been to. But the reality of it is that I came out of that. They did their job in helping like find the right pieces, or helping me.
It must be very hard, but very enriching too. At the end, if you are able to do that, that can be
It's
a
incredible.
learning
Like,
experience. Yeah.
it's such an I appreciate that experience so much. I think it really like changed my life trajectory in a huge way. And I'll forever have my cousin to thank and my wife to thank for allowing me to do it, and for walking with me from home on that. And the people that were there, like, it was the right thing at the right time for me. But um, what there's a lot of things that you take from that, that you really try very hard to retain. I have a journal of things that I wrote during that time. But there's also like exercises and ideas, concepts, lines that you did during that time, or that you saw during that time, you heard during that time, that you try to like hold on to because they changed you, and they
Can you
changed you for the
share
better.
one or two with us, just for
Oh boy, yeah, like
we
one
can
of
learn something?
yeah, yeah. So there's this I don't remember all. I'd have to go back and look at my journal, but there was this exercise that we did where basically they divided us into multiple groups. And I don't recall the exact nature of the exercise, but um, it was presented in a way that was competitive. And at the end of it, pretty quickly we realized that there was no way for you to win. Um, you couldn't win, and so very quickly what I realized afterwards is as soon as I found that out, my immediate objective was to make sure that every other team lost. Right. So, and then kind of reflecting on that and thinking about that afterwards, one of the things that I realized about myself at that time was that it was more important to me that the people around me lost than that I won. Like it wasn't about winning necessarily. It was about, because like sharing a win, I realized sharing a win didn't feel like a win. Sharing and a success didn't feel like success. It needed to be everybody else has come in second place or below. And there's nobody at the same level as myself. And where, like that's fine in like a board game or something like that, where there's a winner and a loser and whatever, right? Like, it's not like what you realize is that mindset that was like down deep as like a core aspect of me that like I have to conquer everybody else in the sense that there's nothing shared like that was something that was carrying not just into friendly game competitions but into every relationship. And this idea of it was more important to me that you lost than that I won, is something that I think about a lot, like every week if not every day to some extent, like trying to that's not something about myself that I wanted to carry with me. And it's something that I want to make sure I don't carry with me anymore. And I feel there's a genuine feeling that I have made improvement there, and that recognizing it, breaking it apart and throwing it to the side and then reminding myself of that's not something that I want as part of me has been, I think, very beneficial. I really appreciate having done it. And I like that part of myself so much more now. So that'd be one thing, but there's probably like a dozen, 15 things that came out of that. Yeah.
And do you think about where this comes from? This because there's like research that says if you're working someplace and you earn like $2,000 per month, I don't know, and everybody around you earns $3,000, you feel terrible. But if you earn the same $2,000 and everybody around you earns 1,000, you feel great.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a half a dozen things, but I think there's a few things that definitely do that come from that. Like I have three siblings, but two of them are brothers that are really close to my age. One of them's a year younger than me. One's 4 years younger than me, 5 years younger than me. But there was always a hyper competitive atmosphere in our house, and we weren't, so that I think definitely carried into it.
And how did your parents dealt with your competitiveness between?
Yeah, that'd be the other side of it, right? Like I think like my mom is very competitive. I think I get that side from her. I think I get a lot of things from her in that way. And I grew up with
we all learn in society like this one is a winner and this one is a loser, so we all think about these terms, right?
Yes. And I think like mom would tell me regularly growing up and even through college and stuff that she really expected. She said, you need to be a lawyer. And that came from her, from I think her own mindset of competitiveness and mine. But the thing about being a lawyer, right, is that it's really actually communicating something, which that is a profession where there is only one winner and there must be a loser, arguably in the courtroom, or that's the objective, right? And so for a lawyer, and so I think like I'm not saying that was like that's just a small note of that, but I think that idea of
did you study law or anything?
No. I have a degree in creative writing. I wanted to be a writer or a teacher like my dad. But I think that idea of what she was communicating was saying, oh, you should be a lawyer or you need to be a lawyer, was them recognizing, even when I wasn't recognizing it, that I have this tendency of must always be right. Everyone else must always be wrong, not just in arguments or disagreements, but in life. And how do you channel that into something? So, I think but I think that that at its root, it was it's unhealthy as a life
Oh yeah.
mindset. And
Oh
so
yeah. I was like this a lot too, and trying to unlearn this stuff too. Yeah.
there's
Like
also
this is
like,
even online in space like RPGs, people would discuss this is the right way to play, and I would get engaged in this kind of stuff. It's
that's
stupid,
right.
at
And
least.
even like
Yeah.
our the denominations that we were part of in church and whatnot were very much of the mindset that their
Mm-hmm.
denomination, their corner of Christianity, was the only right one, right?
Yeah.
And that none of the others were like, you definitely as a kid you were like, oh well, everybody else is going to hell, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
It's
the
like
thing that you have to
yeah.
contend with, right?
I heard in a
Um,
podcast today, Pete Holmes, like the one kind of inspired me about this, was interviewing another, Christian comedian called Angela, and was like, what clicked to me was like, imagine realizing that, well, according to my religion, my congregation, heaven, we only have white Christian Americans. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
everybody else will be in hell. Really?
yeah,
That's God. That's like
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's anyhow. So I think there's probably numerous things that to point to one, but um, yeah, it's just like you did. I don't know. You're not nothing comes from one thing, but definitely like there's and I love my parents. I still see them and talk to them talk to them almost every day. We see them regularly, but definitely like when I realized all these things, one of the things that I was required to do as part of that engagement was going and having conversations with those people. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard conversation, but it was a good conversation to talk with my dad and with my mom and with my wife and with, different people that like I felt like I was shaping or was shaped or had been shaped by, and talk about things about myself
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't want to carry forward anymore, and things that I wanted to add to myself that weren't part of what I was before, and how they affected or were going to be affected by those changes.
Wow.
That was, I think there's a beauty. It was a beautiful time, but it's all just so hard to.
Yeah.
Sometimes those
Yeah.
conversations aren't fun at all.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's hard, and my wife doesn't like me to say this because it gets the image that we have to suffer. But I mean, every pain is a lesson in a way, right? This stuff, the good stuff comes through effort, and I don't know, and pain. Everything uh it's this
Not
like delay gratification, it's effort, is you pay the price in a way, right? It's hard, but it's
It's not.
rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. I think that not everything that's rewarding must come through pain, but I think that a lot of times what we choose is to say, I have enough reward. I don't want to go through pain to get anything else, or to do this other thing, or to have this other experience or whatever. Like where it's like these are comfortable things that I achieved without pain or with very minimal pain, and I am okay living a life with those things. So
Yeah.
only
But
right. And
I mean, maybe that's it. Like the good comfortable thing, it doesn't go through pain, but the rewarding, the one, because reward is because you gave
there's
something,
a
right?
yes,
So if you're not
that's
giving
true.
anything,
Yeah,
how can that be rewarding? It can be pleasurable, of course. It
yeah,
can be relaxing. It can be
that's
yes,
interesting.
pleasurable,
Yeah,
but rewarding.
that's
I
interesting.
think there must be a price
A
that you
reward
pay
comes at
for
the end of
that.
a struggle. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Not every struggle is going to produce a reward, but the only way to obtain a reward is because you have managed to overcome a thing,
Yeah, I think
or
so.
whatever. Yeah, that's
My wife
interesting.
doesn't like this too because it's the image that we have to suffer. But I don't know. I mean, every great thing, every great change, every great, reward that you ever experienced has come through some pain in a way. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but yeah, I think I love that. I think I would say like my struggle, and probably your struggle too, is recognizing that it doesn't always have to be a struggle. Because I think
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know how you are, but I think my on my end, I'm very it's very easy to be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And everything is a struggle. And so your life becomes a struggle. And anything that's not a struggle, you
Oh
feel like
yeah, no,
this
yeah.
isn't a struggle. So it's not the
You
thing that I
have
should
to
be doing. Right. Yeah.
you have to choose your struggles very carefully. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of goes to kind of Buddhism, kind of like life is suffering, but
Yeah.
you choose what you suffer for, right?
Yeah.
What you're willing to suffer for. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's I kind of see that way, and it's kind of pleasurable. Like one thing that helped me, like doing stuff around the house, like I have to do the dishes, I have to hang the clothes, and like the mindset to say like no, I get to do this for the
Get
people
to.
that I love,
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
this. So, yeah.
Mindset shifts. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a big part of what I took away from that too, was like so many things were in have to categories. And
Yeah.
have to's get you tight, right? They get your brain tight, they get your muscles tight, they get everything tight
The
about
way
you.
we think affects us so much, and we don't
Yeah,
realize that.
yeah. My
Yeah.
cousin who took me to Vegas and walked me through that. He had battled stage 4 cancer, lymphoma, and he
Wow.
really believes coming out of it that cancer came about because of his body reacting to a prolonged state of stress in certain areas, and a mindset that weighed on him so heavily on a day-to-day basis from the moment he woke up to the moment he went down, that of course his body being in such a like tense, rigid, uncomfortable state for years and years and years eventually develops something. And so your state of mind kind of affecting your health is a big part of his method and his message now. And I think that there's definitely at least a measure of truth to that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Zach, talking now about maybe other weird experiences. Have you ever had any experience with altered state of awareness, either through deep meditation, hypnosis, trance, or even use of psychedelics or any kind of thing like this? And if you had any experience, how was it, and did you take anything from it?
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, so you gave me this question, and this was the question that was on your questionnaire, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't know that I'm weird in this way, or and not even weird, because I think these are fascinating things. And so, like, I think the answer is no. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, I want to ask Diogo, when he asked me, if he asked me this question in the show,
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, Diogo, now that we've chatted for an hour and a half, is there an experience that you would, if you were to prescribe me an experience in this way, is there a type of experience that you say, Zach, you should, if you have the chance, you should do this?
Well, do you have anything against psychedelics?
Not in theory, no.
Yeah. Well, do you like nature?
Yeah.
What would be like your favorite place to be? I mean, because it's really magical. You can experience nature in a way almost sacred. Like I don't know. You can feel the mountains breathing. You feel
Mm,
a part of everything. You feel connected to
that
if you're open to it, you're like in a good setting with good people around you, like feeling the sun on your skin. It's almost like he's caressing you in a way, if you're open to it, if you're having, doing it safely with water, and being calm and well fed, and
yeah,
that we're the right people, and you're doing it consciously. This will all
yeah,
pass, because if it can get weird, but you
yeah,
also remember that, yeah, this will pass, like in a couple of hours, and this kind of stuff. I For
yeah,
me, I had really great experiences with. I had realizations about, because you can also explore, the thing that you did like weeks there, and explore issues about your past. I have many realizations about myself, like, because I started experimenting with this because of anxiety, but it was at the
mm-hmm,
same time I was discovering I was autistic too. So I
mm-hmm,
was, kind of revisiting a lot of things that happened to me and my experiences, and how I saw things, and seeing my son going through kind of the same things in a way, right?
Yeah. It's
Was really
very interesting.
emotional. Yeah.
I'm definitely like not opposed. Again, in the situation that you presented,
It's
in
an
a
auto exploration, right?
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
about self knowledge. You're taking something that people compare it with deep states of meditation because it creates synapses in your mind that will
yeah,
make new connections, and it's not addictive. You know,
yeah,
you can instead of LSD, you can use mushrooms, magic mushrooms, which they are
yeah.
natural, they grow, and there are a lot of places there in the United States that they are legal, they are
Mm-hmm.
safe, and it's a journey within yourself in a way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and 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 if you're in a good state of mind, if you're uh, good state in your mental health, uh, it can be fantastic. And if you are not, you can actually do treatments, guided treatments with this
Right.
substance to explore this, and have been very effective for a long while and being studied by great universities. So
Yeah.
that's when I started because I was suffering from anxiety,
Yeah.
and my doctor prescribed me, you know, antidepressants,
Mm-hmm.
and I was having other kind of troubles, and my friend said, no, don't take that because this will
Yeah.
help you with this, but will worse with this, and that. So watch these documentaries, and he sent me a bunch of documentaries about microdosing,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried it, and it's really helped me. I think, yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. Yeah, as someone who also has a significant amount of anxiety and who feels like I certainly have gotten a lot of help through a few things, but like the way that you get help and the way that you get better is you are open and
yeah,
like this is like I appreciate that you have those experiences and that your friend gave you like shared with you that information. I think that's awesome, and that it's helping. I think is awesome, and like yeah, I would like at some point maybe you'll have to walk me through an experience. I think that would be
yeah.
I would definitely be down for
That would
that.
be
Yeah.
amazing. Like with well, another convention we could try. One
Yeah.
thing I would like to do here in Brazil, I was like joking that would do like a psychedelic Ludo convention. Go to
Oh
a
yeah.
place,
I'll
we
tell
all
you.
do mushrooms and
I'll
play
have
something.
I'll tell you a really funny, very short story that is exactly this from a convention. We were at a show, a group of us, and it was after hours back at a hotel, and we were playing an RPG, and one of the guys started passing around a bag of chocolate, and uh, uh, I saw as I took it that it's obviously like a high dose. It was a high dose pot
Edible.
chocolate, yeah, edible.
Yeah.
And I that's not something like again don't have anything against it, but it's not something that I've ever done. And so I'm like, okay, we'll do this. We'll dive in. And I really had no effect, by the way. It didn't really affect me much at all. But we had a fun little note there where the only thing
It
that
was
did
the
have
first time you ate it. The first
first
time,
time, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Use well, at least for me, edibles. The first time I take them, no effect.
Yeah.
I have to like the next day take it, and then they will have
Yeah,
something
you have
like.
to get some
And
more.
edibles in general, though, doesn't.
They're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun though because I will say I did have the sensation of floating when I went to bed that night, which I think is pretty
Mm.
common. But
Yeah,
I was
muscular is
like,
very effective. Yeah, the
yeah.
body gets more relaxed. Yeah.
But one of the other guys that was around the table had a chocolate and then had a second chocolate and did not realize that they were
Oh yeah.
edibles, and it was a good experience. It was funny. He realized afterwards it's not anybody's fault or anything, and we had a great time. But it was funny. It was a fun experience, like what experiencing with friends, the some of that side of things, which was not a part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
And seeing like this guy who would not have been opposed to it and certainly was not upset that he had a couple edibles, but watching his like state of consciousness change
Change.
over the evening and getting to kind of like see that firsthand.
Realizing what's going on, right?
Right. That may seem
Yeah.
like a very minor thing, but as someone who was not heavy into anything on that side
Mm-hmm.
at all, like it was the thing that I've said is that um, that was several years ago, but the experiences that I've had since and witnessing people or being a part of other people's experiences, it if anything, it's made me more open and
Yeah.
realizing that there's good things that are in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me a joke that says that we all expecting we're gonna be drugged by strangers, but it's not strangers, it's your
No,
friends.
that's right.
It's your
That's
friends
right.
who are gonna drug you. Yeah.
Yeah. No. In the best possible way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Zach, what about maybe other supernatural things? Do you have any experience with ghosts, aliens, cryptids? Do you believe in
Ooh.
anything? Have you heard anything or seen anything firsthand yourself?
Um. That's a man. I think. Um. I think that I am a enthusiastic believer without firsthand experience, or like I'm very easy to convince in that way. So like um, I love hearing like somebody's
Ghosts and stuff?
ghost story or whatever. Yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I think it's entirely feasible, possible, whatever. Um, but I can't claim to have had those sorts of weird supernatural experiences myself in this way.
Have
More
you
more
have you ever went into a haunted place or anything like this looking or no?
from there's certainly been times, yes, where I've done like small things, or you go into experiences or to locations that are said to be that, and you're like, okay, yeah, let's give this a whirl. Um, and I think that there's like I think the biggest part of me, I think that this definitely, there's got to be something to this, because there's definitely areas, locations, places on the world map that you walk into and you're like, this feels different. And maybe it's just me assigning a difference to this, but I don't think that that's necessarily always the case. I think that there's when great pain or great struggle or great whatever happens in a place and in high doses, I think that it's got to seep in. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, and it's certainly here's the reality, right? If it's not ghosts, if it's not spirits, if it's not whatever, if all of us, or if an enormous amount of us as humans go to the same space and have the same experience, this an emotional experience or a feeling of a presence or whatever, even if that presence is not true, it is certainly a fascinating um,
Yeah.
moment, and certainly that communicates that we are connected to the world around us in ways that are more than just the physical, um, and that there is, like, even just like in the scope of time as a dimension, like the fact that we can walk, like one of my things that my dad really is fascinated by is the Civil War, the American Civil War. And so as a kid and some as an adult, one of the things that we have done is go tour various like sites of massive conflict there. And you walk onto a battlefield and it's just this empty field now, but you know that thousands of people died here for a cause or a couple of causes, and you have this like emotional weight, and there's a solemnness, and there's a whatever. And I don't think that it's all here in you. I feel like there's a part of that is stretching across time, and we're connecting with an atmosphere that was there the day after this massacre occurred, or this conflict occurred, and we're experiencing a fragment of a massive amount of emotions that were there, way back when. Um, yeah, and to me that's a it's a very fascinating concept. Again, I think it comes back to, I'm enthusiastic about the ideas, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I don't know that I could say like I've seen a cryptid or a ghost or a something or an alien or anything like that, though. I think those are those are for other people at this point. Hopefully in the future.
You don't go out looking for them, do you?
Not heavily, no.
Yeah.
My kids, we definitely like. I love that idea of spotting one or doing whatever. Like one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I did with my kids growing up, we'd be on car rides and we would talk about. I'd say they're like, other people might say like, oh look, there's deer out in the field or there's a whatever. Like, and what I would do is we would be driving down the road and I'd be like, hey, do you guys see that T-Rex over there? Right? Like
Yeah.
it's pushing through the trees. You can see the top of its head, and
Yeah.
like that desire
Inserting a little bit of
inserting
magic in their in
magic,
their in their lives. Yeah.
inserting it, but it's also this desire, right? I think that I have that I'm communicating to kids, right? That like that's the world that I would love to live in. That's the world that I know you as a 4-year-old boy would love to live
Yeah.
in, to where you're driving down the road and you see a stegosaurus wandering in the field instead of a cow, right? Like how awesome would that be? So yeah, I mean, we we love the idea. I love the ideas of those experiences, and I would love to be able to walk, to have a family that has a deep bench of set experiences at some point. That would be fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Zach, remember getting into the end of the interview, so I have just a few more questions. They're more whimsical and about personality and stuff. So if you could, have any superpower, what superpower would you have, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
I would have the superpower from the movie Jumper. I don't know what I put on my
Mm.
list, but that's the one that jumps into my head right now. That's the one where basically anything that they can see, any picture, if they've seen a location in a picture or in a movie, or if they've ever been there before, they can just immediately like basically teleport to that area
Mm.
instantaneously. And I think that'd be a super fun power. And what
Yeah.
would I do with it? Like, gosh dang it, like you know, as a Midwest American, your level of experience with the wider world and what you've seen as far as nature and cities and things is, I think I just do like the most rapid of tours across the world possible, and then come back and say, okay, now we're going to plan out of all of these cool experiences, which ones are the ones that I want to go live in for a long time, because that would be awesome.
Yeah. That's great. Teleportation is always very popular. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, probably so.
And if you could choose anything from fiction, from movies, comics, games, books, whatever, and make that thing real in our own world, what would you choose to make it real and why? And that thing can be either a location, a character, an entity, power source, anything like this.
Ooh, I mean, again, I think this the first thing that comes to mind is like I really wish that, personally, I really wish that I would have been born a few decades later, because I really love the idea of space exploration, and of space stations and colonies on different places, and whether that's ever going to be feasible in the next 200 years or not, I don't know. But like the thing that I
Yeah,
would love,
we'll
the thing that I,
survive until that. I don't know.
yeah, we're definitely not
Yeah.
going to survive then. But I would love to live in a world now that's pretty similar to our own, but that we have this a big orbiting massive space station that has transit back and forth to it, and you have a colony on the moon that people live on. Like, I just think that like if we could actually do those things as a society, and we could actually like not just like, I think touching space, touching the moon is step one, but I think like that that has now happened for the last 60 years, and it doesn't seem like we're like we our generation or future generations, we need a new possibility, a new horizon. And I think like how much more expanded my mind or my sense of possibility or my kid's sense of possibility would be if humanity wasn't confined to residing on one world. I think that would be a very
Yeah, yeah.
like gung ho, we can do things, we're going
That's the
places sort
path
of a thing.
for our species. If we survive, that's the path
Yeah,
we need to take. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it's science fiction made real, in another meaningful way, and I think like that always gets me excited. We either need to hit that, or we need to go into like Blade Runner dystopia ASAP. Like we need to go one of the two ways, or maybe both. But
Yeah,
because I
maybe
think
both.
maybe both. But I
Yeah.
love dystopian fiction, and I love that idea. And I'm like, let's just hurry up and get to dystopia if that's where we're going to.
We're
So
kind of there already,
we're
actually.
we're there's definitely
We are
aspects
there
of you're
already.
there,
Yeah.
and in certain areas of the world we're 100% there. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to give that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
If you could live in any fictional setting, world, universe, whatever, from games, from fiction, where would you, what world would you inhabit, and who would you be there?
Um, and probably probably goes right back to our last thing. I probably like I really love the world of Blade Runner. And I know it's the awful place, and I know everybody lives
Mhm.
awful lives for the most part there. But speaking out of ignorance and not having experienced it for myself, there's a part of me that says like that sounds really interesting. Where I would be down. I would be down to live in a Blade Runner
And
universe.
who would you be in that universe? Who would be Zac Goins there?
I don't know that I would want to be a Blade Runner. Um, but I think I would love to be like assuming that I got to teleport with all of Zac Goins's current ideas and thoughts and experiences, and I think I would love to be someone that had a sideline view for what is going on. So maybe like a reporter or something like that in the world of Blade Runner would be like a really interesting gig, really
Cool.
interesting
Yeah.
life.
And finally, Zach, the last question is: do you remember the last time you felt really happy and just grateful for being here and being alive at all and etc. And can you share when was that and what is that you were doing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I'll say, I guess, there's several things that pop into mind, but maybe I'll go the sentimental one this route this time. Like, you've had my wife Megan on the show a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, and um, like, I say this with all sincerity, like, anytime that I get to spend time with her, which is not as often as I would like, but like that's where I get really happy and content and just feel good. She's my comfy place. Um,
Oh yeah.
so like it. The other thing that my past experiences gave me was like an extreme appreciation for her and for what she what she has managed to put up with as far as I'm concerned. And
Yeah,
so
I
for
understand.
me, yeah, it's like every time is the comfy place, and I
Yeah.
don't know that there's been in recent memories a more comfy place than that. So I'll deposit it
Fantastic.
there.
Yeah.
I would note though that the other one that's kind of maybe more fun, and you said whimsy. Um, like I did just get to take an overnight 20-hour road trip with Shadow Zach, um,
Oh yeah.
and just sitting in a big truck, driving a big truck with him across the United States was super fun, and we had a blast doing it. And that whole week of hanging out with him and just a lot of time in the car chatting was a fantastic experience as well that I will love for a very long time.
Yeah. Car trips are
Yeah,
great.
the
Yeah.
best. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Zach, thank you so much for coming here and sharing a little bit of your story, your journey, your wisdom, your life too. Do you have any last message to the wonderful weirdos that are listening to us?
Yeah. I mean, I think let's go back to the very beginning and say if you're a weirdo that's listening to this and you have a game, reach out to me and tell me about your game, because that would make me super happy. And you'll probably get a sale out of it too, but because I'll probably buy it.
Awesome.
But no, I would love to, whatever weird stuff your audience has made, I want it. So reach out to me. You can hit me up on Facebook, Zac Goins on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way. Or you can shoot me an email at zac@wogd.com, WOGD.com, and tell me about your stuff. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, and check out all stuff from Zac too, World of Game Design, and all the work they have been doing, and check other games that are there too. So, Zac, can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show, which is keep it weird, everybody?
Keep it weird, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.